They rushed him in just before midnight. His shirt was soaked in blood, his hands trembling, and his lips barely moving. But what chilled me wasn't his injuries. It was the name, he whispered. A name no one was supposed to know inside that hospital. The patient who knew too much. Grandma Crime Stories. Part 1. Before I tell you what happened that night, don't forget to subscribe to Grandma Crime Stories. Every week, I'll share a new mystery from my years as a nurse and an undercover policewoman. Real stories that still keep me awake at night. It was the middle of winter, and the hospital was quieter than usual. The kind of silence that isn't peaceful, but heavy, like the walls themselves are waiting for something terrible. The double doors banged open. 2 men dragged in a patient, his face pale, his shirt torn, and blood soaking his side. His eyes darted around the ward, not with fear of dying, but fear of someone finding him. I hurried forward, my nurse's training kicking in. We laid him on the stretcher. I pressed cloth against the wound. And that's when he grabbed my wrist, weak, trembling, but desperate. He leaned close and whispered just one name. It was a name I should never have heard in that hospital. A name whispered only in the files of the police. A man we had been trying to catch for years. And suddenly, I knew this wasn't just another patient. I tended his wounds, but his eyes kept flickering to the doors. Every sound, the squeak of shoes, the creak of a trolley, made him flinch. I whispered back, "Why are you here? Who did this to you?" But he only repeated the name. Then, with a rasping breath, he added, "Don't. Trust them." Before I could ask more, one of the men who brought him in leaned over me. His stare was sharp, calculating. "Too sharp for a worried friend? How long will it take?" he asked coldly. Not if the man would be all right, not what can we do, just how long. I felt a chill. These weren't friends, they were guards. Watching him, or perhaps watching me. Now here's where my life became complicated. As a nurse, I had to save the man's life. As an undercover policewoman, I had to figure out who he was running from and whether I had just been handed the key to bringing down one of the most dangerous criminals in London. But playing both roles was dangerous. If those men guessed who I really was, I'd end up on the stretcher next to him. I stitched his wound slowly, carefully, while my mind raced. The more I looked, the more I realized his injuries didn't match a robbery or an accident. No, this was punishment. Someone had wanted him alive, but suffering. That made him valuable. And that made me a target. Hours passed. The men finally left, promising to return in the morning. The ward was still. The lamps flickered. I sat by the man's bed. His breathing was shallow, but his eyes found mine. And then in a voice no louder than a sigh, he confessed. "I was one of them," he whispered, "but I knew too much. I heard things. About the children, about the shipments." His words broke into coughs, but every fragment was like a blade in my heart. He wasn't just a victim, he was part of the crime. He had blood on his hands, too. And yet he wanted to make it right. He told me where the evidence was hidden. Not all of it, just enough to prove he wasn't lying. A place only I could reach without suspicion. But as he spoke, the door creaked open. My heart nearly stopped. A shadow slipped inside. A figure moved down the ward, silent as death. I froze, pretending to check the patient's chart. The figure leaned close, too close. My patient's eyes went wide with terror. And just like that, the shadow disappeared again, leaving nothing but a faint scent of tobacco. Was it a nurse? A doctor? Or one of them checking if their prisoner had talked? I'll never know. But the patient clutched my hand, forcing out one last sentence. "Tell her Agatha." Agatha. He didn't mean a nurse. He didn't mean a doctor. He meant the writer, the woman who turned real crimes into puzzles on paper, the woman whose name lived in both the police files and my own heart. And in that moment, I realized The patient hadn't just come to the hospital for help. He had come to deliver a story meant to be passed on, a story that would not die with him. By dawn, he was gone. Officially, he died of blood loss. That was what went into the hospital records. But I knew the truth. He had died because he knew too much. And I was left with the secret, the address, the evidence, and the name Agatha. It would take years before I understood why he chose me. But that night was the beginning of my double life as a nurse and a secret keeper of crime stories. I'll never forget that night, the patient who whispered secrets with his dying breath, and the shadow who came to silence him. But what I did with the evidence he left behind, well, that's another story. And if you come back next week, I'll tell you exactly how it almost cost me my life.